The American Egg Board is a promotional marketing board appointed by the U.S. government, whose mission is to increase demand for egg and egg products on behalf of U.S. egg producers. Now, if an individual egg company wants to run an ad campaign, they can say whatever they want. But if an egg corporation wants to dip into the $10 million the American Egg Board sets aside for advertising, because the board is overseen by the federal government, corporations are not allowed to lie with those funds. What a concept. Which leads to quite revealing exchanges between egg corporations that want to use that money and USDA on what egg companies can and cannot say about eggs. Thanks to the Freedom of Information Act, I was able to get my hands on some of those emails. Of course, a lot of what I got looked like this. Please note a number of items about our Salmonella Crisis module. Any questions? Or even better, entire sheets of paper that literally just said this. That was the whole sheet of paper. Our tax dollars hard at work. But check this out. This is some egg company trying to put out a brochure on healthy snacking for kids. But because of existing laws against false and misleading advertising, the head of USDA's Poultry Research and Promotion Programs reminds them that you can't couch eggs or egg products as being healthy or nutritious. See, the words nutritious and healthy carry certain connotations. You know that food is actually good for you. But because eggs have the amount of cholesterol they do, plus all the saturated fat, the words healthy and nutritious are problematic when it comes to eggs. This is the USDA saying this. However, the USDA helpfully suggests you can say eggs are nutrient-dense. Wait a second, why can you say eggs are nutrient-dense but not nutritious? Because there's no legal definition of nutrient-dense. You can say Twinkies and Coca-Cola are nutrient-dense, but legally, you can't say something is nutritious unless it's actually nutritious. So, for example, the egg industry wanted to run this ad calling eggs a nutritional powerhouse that aids in weight loss. The USDA had to remind the industry you can't portray eggs as a diet food because of the fat and cholesterol content. In fact, they have nearly twice the calories of anything that can be called low-calorie. Nutritional powerhouse can't be used either. Fine, the industry said, they'll move to Plan B, and headline the ad, Exceptional Nutrition. Nope, because again, given the saturated fat and cholesterol, you can't legally call eggs nutritious. So the ad ended up fine to satisfaction, and instead of weight loss, they had to go with can reduce hunger. USDA congratulated them on their cleverness. Yes, a food that when eaten can reduce hunger. What a concept. You can't even call eggs a food relatively low in calories. Can't say eggs are low in saturated fat. They're not. Can't say they're relatively low in fat. Can't even call them a rich source of protein because they're not. It's illegal to advertise that eggs pack a nutritional wallop. Can't truthfully say that. Or have a high nutritional content. You can't say eggs are nutritious at all. Can't say nutritious. Cannot say eggs are nutritious. Sometimes you have to tell the industry a few times. Eggs have so much cholesterol you can't even say they contribute nutritionally. Can't say eggs are healthful. Certainly can't say they're healthy. Have you seen how much cholesterol there are in those things? Can't say healthy. Can't even say eggs contribute healthful components. Since you can't say eggs are a healthy start to the day, the USDA suggests satisfying start. Can't call eggs a healthful ingredient, but you can call eggs a recognizable ingredient. Can't truthfully say eggs are good for you, can't say they're good for you. By law, the egg industry needs to steer clear of words like healthy or nutritious. For food to be labeled healthy under FDA rules, it has to be low in saturated fat. Eggs fail that test, and less than 90 milligrams of cholesterol per serving. Even half an egg fails that criteria. For the same reason you can't tout ice cream for healthy bones, you can't say eggs are healthy, because they exceed the limit for cholesterol. Egg corporations aren't even allowed to say things like, eggs are an important part of a well-balanced, healthy diet on an egg carton, because it would be considered misleading, according to the USDA's National Egg Supervisor, since eggs contain significant amounts of fat and cholesterol, and therefore contribute to the leading killer in the United States, heart disease. The industry can't afford to tell the truth about eggs, or even the hens that lay them. The industry crams 5 to 10 birds in cages the size of a file cabinet their whole lives, but when providing footage to the media, the American Egg Board instructs, do not show multiple birds in cages, they look too crowded and open us up to activist criticism. In other words, do not show the truth. Not only is the industry barred from saying eggs are healthy, they can't even refer to eggs as safe. All references to safety must be removed, because more than 100,000 Americans are salmonella poisoned every year from eggs. The Egg Board response to this egg-borne epidemic is that salmonella is a naturally occurring bacteria. The egg industry didn't think that should necessarily be the key message, fearing it may be counterproductive by implying there's no avoiding salmonella in eggs aside from avoiding eggs altogether. That's why the American Egg Board can't even mention anything but eggs cooked hard and dry. No soft-boiled, no over-easy, no sunny side up, because of salmonella. The American Egg Board's own research showed that the sunny side up cooking method should be considered unsafe. And because of avian influenza as well, not just salmonella, in light of bird flu viruses, eggs must be cooked firm. The VP of Marketing for the Egg Board complained to the USDA, saying they'd really like to not have to dictate that yolks are firm. What about some Washington Post article saying running yolks may be safe for everyone except pregnant women, infants, elderly, or those with chronic disease? Turns out that was a misquote. They can't be considered safe for anyone. Instead of safe, you can call eggs fresh, the USDA Marketing Service helpfully suggests, but you can't call eggs safe. You cannot say eggs are safe to eat, can't say they're safe, can't even mention safety, can't say they're healthful. All references to healthfulness must be deleted as well. Wait a second. Eggs can't really be called healthy? Eggs can't even really be called safe? Says who? Says the United States Department of Agriculture. For example, 11 years ago, blueberries gained notoriety for their ability to improve memory among elderly rats. Now, it's always difficult to extrapolate between species, but I told people it might translate over and not just work in rats, but work for their pet hamsters too. But we finally, this year, have human data, the first human trial to assess the potential benefit of blueberry supplementation on neurocognitive function. What do you think they found? Blueberries improve memory in humans. Is this fact, or is this fiction? Let's look at the study. Blueberries improve memory in humans. Fact. And it turns out the healthful properties may survive processing into products like blueberry jam, but best to store it in the fridge even before it's opened. The concept of vitamins was first described by none other than Dr. Funk. In his landmark paper in 1912, the concept that there were complex compounds that our body couldn't make from scratch, and so had to get from our diet. By the mid-20th century, all of the vitamins had been discovered and isolated, but it wasn't until the 60s that we realized that certain fats were essential too. In 1929, the necessity for fat was definitively settled in the diet of the rat. But when one of the researchers tried a 99% fat-free diet on himself for 6 months, ironically, he felt better. His high blood pressure went away, he felt more energetic, his migraines disappeared. This one-man experiment fortified the medical profession's doubt that essential fatty acids had any relevance to human nutrition, until TPN was developed in the 1960s, total parenteral nutrition, meaning feeding someone exclusively through an IV, initially developed for babies born without working intestines. But the first preparations were fat-free, because we didn't think humans needed fat. And so they rapidly induced severe essential fatty acid deficiencies, ultimately convincing the medical community that some fats are indeed essential. They started out using safflower oil, but as they discovered in a young girl they were giving it to after an abdominal gunshot wound, we don't just need fat, but specific fats like omega-3s, and so when they switched to soybean oil, instead she was restored to normal. The fact that it took so long and under such extreme circumstances to demonstrate the essential nature of omega-3s illustrates how hard it is to develop overt omega-3 deficiency. Of course, the amount required to avoid deficiency is not necessarily the optimal amount for health. A spoonful of orange juice worth of vitamin C would be enough to avoid scurvy, the overt vitamin C deficiency disease. But no one considers that enough vitamin C for optimal health. What would optimal omega-3 status look like? Well, doubt has been cast on their role in heart health, which appears to be based on a faulty premise in the first place, and so taking extra omega-3s for our heart might not make any sense. But what about for our baby's brain? Extra DHA may not help pregnant or breastfeeding fish eaters, but those who want to avoid the contaminants in fish can take supplements of pollutant-free algae oil to get the best of both worlds for their babies. But what about adults? No apparent psychological or neurological benefit of DHA supplementation for the general public, but what about in those who don't eat fish? Take the famous Alpha-Omega trial. Thousands of people randomized for over 3 years to get either long-chain omega-3s from fish, short-chain omega-3s from plants, or placebo, and they found no significant benefits for any kind of omega-3 supplementation on global cognitive decline. But most were eating fish, already getting preformed DHA in their diet, and so general population studies like this that found no benefit can't fully inform us about the role of DHA in brain health, any more than giving half of these people oranges, finding no difference in scurvy rates, 0 in both groups, and concluding that vitamin C plays no role in scurvy. In 2013, for the first time, DHA supplementation was found to improve memory and reaction time among young adults who rarely ate fish. Previous randomized controlled trials failed to find such a benefit among 18 to 45-year-olds, but they all only lasted a few months at most, whereas the 2013 study lasted 6 months. So if all the studies either showed no effect or a positive effect, one might give it a try. But in one of those shorter trials, DHA supplementation didn't just fail to show benefit, it appeared to make things worse. After 50 days, those who consumed the DHA had worse memory than those taking the placebo. So out of the 6 randomized controlled trials, 4 showed nothing, 1 showed a benefit, 1 showed a harm. So if it was just about boosting brain function in the short term, I'd err on the side of caution and spend my money elsewhere. But what about preserving brain function over the long run? I'll address that next. By our 70s, 1 in 5 of us will suffer from cognitive impairment, and within 5 years, half will progress to dementia, in a progression from cognitive impairment without dementia to dementia and death. The earlier we can slow or stop this process, the better. Although an effective treatment for Alzheimer's disease is unavailable, even interventions just to control risk factors could prevent millions of cases. So an immense effort has been spent on identifying risk factors for Alzheimer's and developing treatments to reduce them. In 1990, a small study of 22 Alzheimer's patients reported that they had high concentrations of something called homocysteine in their blood. The homocysteine story starts back in 1969, when a Harvard pathologist reported 2 cases of children, one dating back to 1933, whose brains had turned to mush. They both suffered from extremely rare genetic mutations that led to abnormally high levels of homocysteine in their bodies. So is it possible, he asked, that homocysteine could cause brain damage even in people without genetic defects? Well, now here we are in the 21st century, and homocysteine is considered a strong independent risk factor for the development of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Having a blood level over 14 may double our risk. In the Framingham study, they estimated that as many as 1 in 6 Alzheimer's cases may be attributable to this elevated homocysteine in the blood, now thought to play a role in brain damage, cognitive, and memory decline. Our body can detoxify homocysteine, though, using 3 vitamins: folate, vitamin B12, and vitamin B6. So why don't we put them to the test? No matter how many studies find an association between high homocysteine, cognitive decline, dementia, or Alzheimer's disease, a causal role, a cause-and-effect role, can only be confirmed by interventional studies. Now, initially, the results were disappointing. Vitamin supplementation did not seem to work. But the studies were tracking neuropsychological assessments, which are more subjective, compared to structural neuroimaging, actually seeing what's happening to the brain. And a double-blind, randomized, controlled trial found that homocysteine lowering by B vitamins can slow the rate of accelerated brain atrophy in people with mild cognitive impairment. As we age, our brain atrophies, slowly atrophies, but the shrinking is much accelerated in patients suffering from Alzheimer's disease. Kind of an intermittent rate of shrinkage is found in people with mild cognitive impairment, but so the thinking is maybe if we could slow down the rate of brain loss, we could slow down this conversion to Alzheimer's disease. So they tried giving people B vitamins for 2 years, and they found it markedly slowed the rate of brain shrinkage. The rate of atrophy in those with high homocysteine levels was cut in half. A simple, safe treatment can slow the accelerated rate of brain loss. A follow-up study went further by demonstrating that B vitamin treatment reduces by as much as 7-fold the brain atrophy in the region specifically vulnerable to Alzheimer's disease, to the disease process. Here's the amount of brain atrophy over 2 years in the placebo group. Here's the amount of loss in the B vitamin group. Less brain loss. Now, the beneficial effect of B vitamins was confined to those with high homocysteine, indicating a relative deficiency in one of those 3 vitamins. So wouldn't it be better to not get deficient in the first place? Most people get enough B12 and B6, but the reason these folks were stuck up at a homocysteine of 11 is that they probably weren't getting enough folate, which is found predominantly in beans and greens. 96% of Americans don't even make the minimum recommended amount of dark green leafy vegetables, the same pitiful number that don't eat the minimum recommendation for beans. In fact, if you put people on a healthy diet, on a plant-based diet, you can drop their homocysteine levels 20% in just 1 week, up from around 11 down to 9. The fact that they showed significant homocysteine lowering without any pills, without supplements, even at 1 week, suggests that multiple mechanisms may have been at work. They suggest it may be because of the fiber. Every gram of daily fiber consumption may increase folate levels in the blood nearly 2%, perhaps by boosting vitamin production in our colon by our friendly gut bacteria. It could also be from the decreased methionine intake. That's where homocysteine comes from. Homocysteine is a breakdown product of methionine, which comes mostly from animal protein. And so if you give someone bacon and eggs for breakfast, then a steak for dinner, you can get these spikes of homocysteine levels in the blood. Thus, decreased methionine intake on a plant-based diet may be another factor contributing to these lower, safer homocysteine levels. The irony, of course, is that those who eat plant-based diets long-term, not just at a health spa for a week, have terrible homocysteine levels. Meat eaters up at 11, but vegetarians and nearly 14 vegans at 16. Why? They're getting more fiber and folate, but they're not getting enough vitamin B12. Most vegans can be classified as being likely to suffer from hyperhomocysteinemia, too much homocysteine in the blood, because most vegans in this study were not supplementing with vitamin B12 or eating vitamin B12 fortified foods, which is critical for anyone eating a plant-based diet. But if you take vegans and give them B12, their homocysteine can drop down below 5. Why not just down to 11? Well, the reason the meat eaters were stuck up at 11 is probably because they weren't getting enough folate. But once vegans got enough B12, they could finally fully exploit the benefits of their plant-based diets and come out with the best levels of all. You also may remember how the USDA measured the antioxidant content of various varieties of apples. Red Delicious shot to #1, with Granny Smith in a surprise upset taking the #2 slot. But people kept asking me, what about Cortland? What about Empire? What about Macintosh? Everyone has their own favorite. Someone even asked me, what about crab apples? And all I could say was, I have no clue. That's all anyone could in fact say, because they hadn't been tested until now. 21 different varieties tested. I mean, why bite into a Red Delicious when you can bite into a good old 569181 apple? There's actually 7,500 different types of apples, but let's look at some crowd favorites. In alphabetical order: Braeburn, Cortland, Crab Apples, Empire, Golden Nugget, Honeycrisp, and Ida Red. Here's the graph, and we have a new winner. In fact, 2 new winners, putting Red Delicious in its place. We have a new loser, too, less nutritious than even a Fuji. Let's start there. Which one's the least nutritious apple? And the bad apple is Golden Nugget. What about #1? Mirror, mirror on the wall, which is the healthiest of them all? Let's take a bite out of the tree of knowledge. Crab apples. Crab apples? Gross. What's this one, though? I mean, what's the healthiest apple you can actually buy? 5 options left to choose from: Braeburn, Cortland, Empire, Honeycrisp, or Ida Red. Well, it's not Macintosh, not Empire, not Braeburn — I love Braeburn — and not Cortland. The healthiest apple beating out Red Delicious is Ida Red. Dr. Ornish published an editorial in the American Journal of Cardiology last year that I think really sums up where we are, describing a growing convergence of scientific evidence that an optimal diet is mostly plant-based. Make sure it has nuts, soy, and fiber, and you can drop your bad cholesterol as much as taking drugs every day for the rest of your life, but without the cost and without the side effects. Save the country $20 billion. Of course, most patients aren't even given the plant-based option because of the patronizing belief among doctors that no one will actually do it. But in reality, most people don't want to take the drugs. People hate the side effects, they don't make you feel any better, and it's scary popping pills every day so you don't keel over and die. People don't even want to think about it. However, when people actually improve their diets, you actually feel so much better so quickly that it reframes the reason for making these changes from fear of dying, which is usually not sustainable, to joy of living, which often is. And the diet doesn't just help your cholesterol. Unlike the drugs, a plant-based diet can also prevent and treat diabetes, hypertension, obesity, prostate cancer, breast cancer, etc. Pills can't do all that. And instead of being on a list of medications, one drug for this one or two drugs for that, there's not one diet for heart disease, another one for diabetes. A plant-based diet covers all the bases. Why? Because plant-based foods contain more than 100,000 different disease-preventing nutrients. Let me say that again, 100,000 phytonutrients only found in plants. Blueberries have the anthocyanins for memory, tomatoes are rich in the red pigment lycopene, which targets heart disease and cancer, ginger, got gingerols for hypertension, pomegranates have totally different phytonutrients, and let's never forget kale. The list goes on and on. And you can't just take these phytonutrients in a pill. Beta-carotene pills may actually increase cancer risk, as opposed to the whole carrot, which may lower our risk. And we probably couldn't swallow 100,000 pills a day anyway. Then he talks about his work stopping and reversing the progression of even severe coronary artery disease, slowing, stopping, or reversing cancer. Living and eating healthy actually changes you on a genetic level, upregulating disease-preventing genes and downregulating genes that promote breast cancer, prostate cancer, inflammation, and oxidative stress. Drugs can't do that. The bottom line: people tend to think of breakthroughs in medicine as new drugs, lasers, high-tech surgery, but they have a hard time believing that simple choices can be as powerful as drugs and surgery, but they often are, sometimes even better. And I will leave you on that note. As important it is for us to eat our greens, we should also eat our beans. We've all heard about how good soybeans are for us, but what about the less exotic pinto bean? Half a cup of cooked pinto beans a day for 2 months means a 20-point drop in our cholesterol. New wonder drug? No, just pinto beans. Same with baked beans. Half a cup of canned vegetarian baked beans a day for 2 months, navy beans this time, and the same amazing effect. It was a randomized crossover clinical study with a control group and the vegetarian baked bean treatment group. Of all the treatments we have in allopathic medicine, radiation treatments, chemotherapy, a vegetarian baked bean treatment sounds pretty benign. Right? Imagine if there were a pill that could do that, and go good with toast. They'd be making a fortune. Beans are, after all, one of nature's most perfect foods. The whole plant in just one little package, right? Low in fat, and no cholesterol, and high in fiber and protein. So just like we can improve the nutrition of any dish by adding greens and other veggies, we can do the same by adding beans. Another study this year showed some remarkable qualities about watermelon, a fruit once dismissed as being basically, well, water. Now we realize it's a rich source of citrulline, which I talked about in a previous year's review.